Welcome back to the shop. This week I'm going to share with you guys our Trans-Wisconsin adventure trip. I didn't get a lot of riding footage, but I think the story is enjoyable just the same. The guys all showed up on Thursday night and stayed here in the shop so that we'd be ready first thing Friday morning. And getting ready for this trip, I kind of planned a fun route out to the beginning of the Trans-Wisconsin Adventure Trail, but it was going to take us a lot longer on the route. So I gave everybody the option, do you want to just jump on 2-lane, get out there quickly, or do you want to take this more interesting route? Everybody agreed that they wanted to do the more interesting route. So we started out on some gravel roads that I ride frequently to head out west and ride some of the good roads that are out there. Except this time the GPS had actually calculated a route that was a little bit of a variant from my normal route, and it turned out to be very interesting because early on we encountered this cool little trail section through the woods, and there were down logs. So with 4 of us, it was no problem. We just kind of grouped together, helped each other out, and got over each and every one of the logs, and we managed to get through there without any issues, although some of the logs were pretty wet and slippery, but it made for a good time and everybody was enjoying the trip so far. So we continued on through some gravel roads in the driftless area and had a really great time. We did, though, have one guy, Tom, get stung in the neck by a bee. Luckily, it wasn't John because he's allergic to bees, but it left a pretty good welt. We continued on the trip and into Galena for lunch. This was all before the start of the official Trans-Wisconsin Adventure Trail. We stopped there in Galena, which is a beautiful area to have lunch, and the owner's brother was sitting down talking to us while we were having lunch. And this is just the first of many encounters along this trip that just highlight why I enjoy these so much. Essentially, this guy noticed that, he had the welt on his neck. We talked about it. It was a bee sting, and that we were going to run over to Walgreens after lunch and pick up some ointment to, help with the swelling. We continued on with our lunch, and during the lunch, he had kind of disappeared for a little bit, came back. He had making a run to Walmart to pick up some ointment to treat this bee sting and bring it back for us to save us the time from going over there. So that was just really cool, and just an example of how people seem to respond when you're out on these trips, and just consistent with the rest of this trip too. So we finished up lunch and caught a little bit of rain, or what looked like was going to be rain, as we got to the actual beginning, the origins, as the sign indicates, for the Trans-Wisconsin Adventure Trail just outside of Galena, Illinois. So we were on our route, we were having a blast. We got to the infamous overhanging rock. We stopped to take some pictures and some short video clips, and it was just, a real nice time. We were all having fun. Everybody was smiling and laughing. The group was really getting along well. So it was making the trip an enjoyable experience all the way through. After we left there, we continued on, and you get to the little water crossing, except it was slightly different this time around. They had done some more work, so we had to kind of ride around a ridge and through this little stream or water flow that was happening there. But we all made it through perfectly fine. But when we got to the other side, what we had noticed is that Tom's rear tire, although we had checked it before the trip, seemed to be wearing at an unusually fast pace. These TKC 80s, once they start to go and the edges round off, the center blocks when you're riding on pavement and gravel can really start to wear down quick, and that's what we were encountering here. So we put a few feelers out there through Facebook and other channels to see if maybe we could track down a tire, and Chad Berger had managed to find out that there was a TKC 70 in La Crosse, Wisconsin. So we had a quick conversation right there. Tom was really interested in trying to find a solution where it didn't disrupt our trip, but we were headed further north and we didn't know what was going to be available. So we agreed that we would go to La Crosse, we would stay overnight where we knew there was a tire and some options available to us, and see what we could figure out. So we went ahead and we headed over there. We did catch some rain along the way. We stayed overnight, had some real nice dinner at a Mexican restaurant right next to the hotel that we were staying in, and it was just an enjoyable dinner and an enjoyable experience. However, the tire issue that Tom was having would ultimately lead to a blessing in disguise. When we woke up the following morning and we walked out, my front tire had gone completely flat. Tom was carrying a compressor on his bike, so we pulled that out, we filled the tire up, and we were headed over to the shop that opened at 8 a.m. We headed over to the shop, we pulled in, kind of explained the situation. Hey, we're on this big trip. We know you're busy, but we're looking for a tire, hopefully something more off-road oriented than the TKC 70. And while you're at it, could you take a look at my front tire because it's leaking air? This dealership was extremely rude. I mean, it was just like one-word answers all the way through. No, we don't have any other tires. Yes, we can get you in, but not until 10 o'clock to look at your front tire. Just really abrupt. And so we decided that we weren't going to deal with this and we'd figure something out. There was another shop in town. They opened at 9 a.m. So we made the decision to go and have breakfast first, and then we would call the other shop afterwards. While having breakfast, we just had some great laughter. Again, the waitress was even kicking in on some of the ribbing that was taking place between all of us, and it just continued the overall theme of this trip of just having fun and making jokes all along the way. We got done with breakfast, and when we went outside, my tire had already gone flat again. So even though we had originally come to La Crosse for Tom's rear tire, my front tire was actually becoming even more of a concern because we weren't going to be able to continue the trip without finding where the leak was coming from and a fix for it. By this time, the other shop had opened up, so I put a call in over there, explained the situation again. Hey, we're on this trip. This is what's going on. If we bring the bike over, would you be able to take a look at it? And unlike the first shop, the immediate response from this shop was absolutely, bring it in. We'll take a look at it. We don't have much in the way of, off-road oriented tires, but we'll be more than happy to take a look and see what we can do. This was Two Brothers Power Sports in La Crosse there, and when we arrived, boy, were we in for a treat. These guys just welcomed us with open arms, immediately started talking to us about what the problems were. They brought the KTM in to take a look at the front tire. We started talking to various people from the parts counter to the service counter. Even the owner wound up getting involved in trying to figure out what was needed and how we could manage to do all of this. In the process, they had discovered that they did not have any tires that were off-road oriented in stock. So we started talking to the owner and saying, hey, you've got suppliers. Is there any way that maybe you could talk to a supplier, see if they have one in stock, and if they do, could they ship it somewhere further up the trail and we could meet up with the tire, change it in a parking lot or whatever we had to do. So we spent some time looking into this option. The closest off-road oriented tire was 3 states away. So this just was not going to work out for us pursuing this avenue. But the owner and others said, hang tight, we'll continue to look into options. And in the meantime, we'll figure out what's going on with your front tire. So time passed and they came up to me and said, hey, we've got news on your tire, but it's not good news. So we went back and we looked at it. Before the trip, I had swapped the rear tire, but not the front. Usually I can get about 2 rear tires per 1 front tire. The front tire was the one that I did the Colorado trip on, so I figured it would be okay for this one as well, and I thought I would give it a try. As it turns out, I must have caught a rock or something on the Colorado trip, and it had put a little cut in the sidewall. And then obviously as we were doing this terrain, what had happened is the pressure of that and the bouncing around, impact, so on and so forth, had actually split the tire open, and now it was just, leaking air and wasn't going to hold up. So this was not good news, and we were only day 2 into our trip. But again, we hung tight. The owner said, let me see what else I can work out for you. So we were sitting tight for a while, looking around, so on and so forth. I came back over to the counter, and Ben, the owner, was at a computer, and he just had this grin on his face like the cat that ate the canary. So I said to him, I'm like, you look like the cat that ate the canary. Does that mean that you've got something in the works? Are you about ready to pull a rabbit out of your hat? And he just kind of grinned and said, well, I don't know yet and I don't want to say anything. So just hang tight and I'll let you know in a couple of minutes. So day 2 of the trip started with some serious tire problems. One of the guys had a really worn rear tire, TKCs, they go quickly, and then I woke up to a flat tire. We called around to a couple places, and basically we're getting nowhere till we came to Ben here. And so Ben, tell us a little bit. 4 guys wander in, right? They're asking for tires that you don't even stock or carry.
It's awesome you guys are doing what you're doing. It's my favorite kind of riding. So I've done some, not what you guys are doing is to the extent, but it's some awesome riding. So we had a great customer of ours that had a set of tires here. We just made the call, and he was more than happy to let us take care of you guys. So it's great that we can do that.
That's awesome. We greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
Well, it's awesome.
If it weren't for Ben here, our trip might be ending early. We moved on to Tom's rear tire. What do you got there? Turns out he had another customer that had brought a bike in. They didn't know about this when we first came in, but he had brought the tires in and swapped them for street tires. There was barely any use on this rear tire, and so if we wanted it, it was a takeoff, but it was an option for us. So we took a look at the tire, and it was certainly way better than what Tom had on the back of his Africa Twin when we started the trip, or where we were at this point. So we agreed to do that, and everything was sorted out. I mean, these guys were just fantastic. They went out of their way to track these options down for us, to help us out, to work with us, and just get us back on the road, which was extremely well appreciated. While all of this was going on, the guy at the parts counter was helping us try and figure out how to do an interesting route from where we were back to connect with the Trans-Wisconsin Adventure Trail. One of the sales guys came over. He had sent me a link to my phone with some other options. We figured all this out, and we had a nice route plan from the dealership back over to the Trans-Wisconsin Adventure Trail. With all of this sorted, we decided we absolutely needed to do something for these guys to really, show them our appreciation and gratitude beyond just, editing it in and promoting them here on this video. So we decided to find a local place that delivered pizza, and we ordered pizza for the whole crew, and everybody there was just ecstatic. I mean, the service shop, the parts guys, the sales guys, the owner, everybody here was phenomenal and just instrumental in really making this trip a possibility to continue on. And these types of challenges on these trips, to me at least, is really what makes the adventure. If everything goes as planned, then it's not really an adventure, it's just a ride. But going through this type of stuff, having people help you out, seeing the goodness there, and just experiencing that, and such a difference between the first and the second dealership, again, just can't say enough nice things about them. So if you are in that area, please, 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 go and see Ben and others at Two Brothers Power Sports in La Crosse, Wisconsin. They will take good care of you. They're great people, and we just can't thank them enough. So we decided to take this nice curvy section from the dealership back up to the Trans-Wisconsin Adventure Trail. And this was a scenic road, and they had told us that when you see the apple orchard, be sure to stop there. There's a beautiful overlook out across the bluffs, and it's a great view. So we did that. While we were sitting there, a county sheriff pulled up, just checked to see if we were okay and everything like that. Great guy. We told him everything was fine. He waved at us and was going to be on his way. We asked him if he wanted to come be in the shot with us. He kind of laughed, and I think he thought about it for a second, but he was on duty, so he went ahead and took off. But it was still funny to see him kind of hesitate like that and consider joining us in this scenic shot that we had of the road. Real nice guy, real fun experience again. So we had a good time there, took some good shots, and then we continued on, and finally through some back roads, some fun, curvy sections, we managed to make our way back over and reconnect with the Trans-Wisconsin Adventure Trail. Now, by this point in time, we were obviously very far behind our original schedule because we'd lost about a half a day, working with the shop to sort through all these tire situations and do the extra mileage over to and back from La Crosse. So we started down the regular route, and we even took a little ATV trail that was deep sand. I managed to drop the KTM. The KLR dropped his behind me, probably because I stopped unexpectedly when I dropped my bike. But either way, we had dropped those two. We turned around, decided to check on the other guys because they weren't right behind us. The Africa Twin was stuck standing upright. The rear wheel had just dug a hole in the sand. This stuff was like 12-inch deep, super soft sand. So we talked about it and decided that this optional loop that we had kind of decided to do wasn't going to work out too well. It was just too soft. So we headed back, reconnected with the main route, and continued on our way on the normal route. However, after we made our way through some of the ATV trails, we realized that, time was just slipping away from us, and we had to make a decision. We were either going to stay on the interesting terrain but not make it all the way to Lake Superior because I had to get back for work, or we could two-lane it up to Clam Lake and then still continue on the following day, make up the time there by doing the two-lane route instead of the more off-road oriented route, and still make it to Lake Superior. So the group kind of got together, we discussed it, and there was no arguments, no nothing. We just kind of worked through it, and that's really an interesting thing about these group dynamics. People that you've never even really met before or only once before, you find a way and a common ground, and you just work through these things as they happen on a ride. So we quickly discussed it, and we all decided and agreed that we would go ahead and we would 2-lane it up to Clam Lake and make up that time that we had lost. And then that way we could go ahead and get up the following morning and continue the regular Trans-Wisconsin Adventure Trail all the way up to Lake Superior. When we arrived at Clam Lake, we had called ahead and we found this Elkhorn Lodge. The Elkhorn Lodge is really just, a single-story building with a 5-room lodge, a bar and a restaurant. So we went in and we asked if we were in the right place. They said yes. We decided to go to the restaurant to have dinner. And again, during dinner, there was just jokes flying back and forth and stories being told, and we are just laughing and having a great time. The waitress comes over and she says to us, she says, "How long have you guys all been friends?" And we all kind of laughed and grinned because we answered and we said, we just met each other on a ride earlier this year, and this is only like the second time that we've all ridden together. Now, Tom and I have known each other a little bit longer, but the 4 of us as a group just came together for the second time after doing a ride in Michigan earlier this year. If you haven't seen that, I'll put a card up top to check that out. But we were just getting along so well and having so much fun. This waitress swore that we must have known each other for like 20 years, and here we are, only the second time riding together. So it just goes to highlight exactly, how smooth things were going, how much fun we were having, and just what a good camaraderie was happening between the 4 of us. Again, very similar to other trips that I've done where people just come together and the riding just brings you together and establishes that strong friendship really, really quickly. So we were having a great time. We finished up dinner there and then, got to bed early so that we could get started early the following day and make the rest of the trip. Getting up in the morning, we refueled gas, had some coffee, got the bikes ready to go, and we were back on the normal route, but we wanted to kind of make a quick trip from the hotel over to the Delta Diner because we wanted to grab breakfast there and then continue on our route. So we took a really, really scenic, interesting 2-lane curvy road up to the Delta Diner, and along the way, I saw this sign for a divide up in Wisconsin, and the sign just reminded me of the one that was out in Colorado. So I really wanted a picture of this, and I tried honking and flashing the lights. I was at the back of the group at this point in time, but nobody really saw it. So I decided I would just go ahead and pull over. I knew the rest of the group would see that I wasn't with them. They would turn around and come back. And sure enough, I waited there a couple of minutes, and that's exactly what happened. They realized I wasn't with the group. They came back to check on me, probably thinking something bad happened, but luckily nothing bad had happened. It was just stopping for the picture. Everybody got it, they understood. So we stopped there on the side of the road, took some video and some pictures, set up the tripod, and got the shot that I ultimately was really looking for, again, just because it matches up so closely. And I'll put both of those side by side for you to see what I'm talking about. But the 2 signs looked very similar. 4 guys on each ride, adventure bikes. It was just a great, great moment. So we got that shot, continued on our way. We got to the Delta Diner. As always, there's a bit of a wait. As we were waiting, some guys came out that were riding an Africa Twin and a V-Strom. We got to talking to them. The wait went by really, really quickly. And before you know it, we were in the diner. And again, just laughing and having a great time inside the diner. Finished up breakfast, and now we were on to some of the most sandy bits that I remembered on the Trans-Wisconsin Adventure Trail. But with the rain and everything else, the sand just worked out really, really well. It was packed down a bit. It was a lot of fun. It was actually one of the few times that I have fun riding on the sand. So we continued the trip. It was fun. It was playful. We worked our way through all of that, and we finally arrived at Lake Superior. It was just a phenomenal trip all the way up. We were excited to be there. We hung out on the beach for a few minutes, took some more pictures and video, and then we decided to go ahead and start the trip back. And at this point in time, we had had a pretty long day. It was kind of, a little bit of the end already because we'd made it to Lake Superior, and now it was kind of the ride back, which isn't as interesting as the ride up. So The rain started pouring, you know, I think we were all getting tired. It started to get to that point where when we stopped for fuel and stuff and we were talking about plans, it just wasn't the normal joking, jovial nature that we had experienced all along the way. So we all kind of knew what was going on, but somehow or another, as we got closer to the night's stay and we stopped to figure out, you know, lodging, it just switched right back to where it was. We were all laughing and having a good time. And so that little bit of kind of stress rolling in from the ride coming to an end and the weather and everything else, it only took a few minutes to subside and we were right back to having a good time. So after talking about it, we decided to go ahead and stay in a fancy hotel, the Holiday Inn. We went over there and there was an interesting named restaurant bar right across the street, Nuts Deep 2. Well, how can you stay there and not go eat and drink at Nuts Deep 2? So we headed over there again, laughter, jovial nature, having a blasted dinner, good time, smiles. Most of the guys bought t-shirts. I did not, I probably should have, but we had a great time. We went back to the Holiday Inn, caught a good night's sleep, waited out the weather in the morning before finishing up the trip back home, and it was just overall a great experience. When we got back here in the shop, again, more laughter and just joking while everybody packed up. Tom was taking off to head back home. John and Mike were hanging out for another night. They were going to go riding out west. They wound up doing that and having a blast even the following day. Packed up everything that night, stayed overnight one more night, and then headed back to Michigan. So it was just an absolutely great time. We're all already talking about planning the next trip. It'll probably be next year. But, you know, again, just a good time had by all, a lot of fun. Again, very similar to other group rides that I've done in the past, where you just get to enjoy each other's company. You know, you get along really well and just the ride comes together. So all in all, it was a blast. I hope you guys enjoyed this story. If you like this, be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it on social media. As always, until next time, take care and ride safe.